Ladies and handsome men, I am not sure what's true or false in this story. I take gossip, tea, rumor, and scandal from yesteryear, from online, from word of mouth, from books, and I ball it up and I tell you guys a story. Now, let's get to it.
Hi everybody, this is Ashley with Ashley Says So, and I am back with another old Hollywood scandal video. But baby, let me say something to you. It's just a scandalous thing, child. Don't do me, sir. What? Child. Merch, baby. AshleySaysSo.net will be up and running by the second week of August. Honey, we got shirts, pants, coffee mugs, tumblers, hats. I have something on that website for every personality. It may be a little bit too much, but I just wanted to make sure everybody was covered. Again, the website, AshleySaysSo.net, will be up and running by the second week of August. And of course, I'll post reminders on every single platform I have so everybody has a chance to support. And I want to give a big shout out and a huge thank you to all of you guys who supported me by sending me gifts from my Amazon wish list. Every single one of you guys should have received a personal thank you from me. And baby, if there's anybody else who also wants to help by gifting me stuff from my Amazon wish list, honey, it's in the description. And now that all of that is out of the way, it is time to get to the scandalous tea in this video. Now, y'all have already seen the subject of this video in the thumbnail, and people in my generation and maybe 2 or 3 generations above me know this group as the Little Rascals. But when they first came out and took the world by storm, they were originally called Our Gang. And just to give you a little backstory on how Our Gang was created, producer Hal Roach was casting for a new film when he was in between auditions. And as he waited for the next actor to come in, he noticed a group of children playing outside of his window. Now, gossip claims that the children were between 3 and 5 years old and they were playing with sticks. And per rumor, the smallest child in the group had the biggest stick, and he was chasing all the other kids around, busting them in the back of the head with the big stick. And so Hal Roach is just watching this, giggling and sure enough tickled at how this little bitty child is chasing these other children around and knocking them out. And before you know it, about 15 minutes have passed. And so he starts thinking to himself, my goodness, I have really been entertained for about 15 minutes just watching Child's Play. And so from that, he got the bright idea that Child's Play could actually be made into a show, into a form of entertainment for the masses. And actually, Hal Roach was already working on a child's show. This show was going to be called Sunshine Sammy, and it was going to be centered around actor Ernie Morrison. And what Hal Roach was trying to do was absolutely incredible, because had Sunshine Sammy got off the ground, he would have made Ernie Morrison the first black child superstar. Unfortunately, Sunshine Sammy only got 1 episode before the bosses told Hal Roach that they were not going to put any more money behind it and that they didn't think that the show was going to go anywhere. And so Hal Roach was in the midst of shutting Sunshine Sammy down when he'd seen these children playing outside of his window. Now he figured he didn't have to shut down Sunshine Sammy at all. Instead of making the show only about Sunshine Sammy, he would make the show about Sunshine Sammy as well as a whole group of kids, each one with their own personality and own quirk. But Sunshine Sammy would be the leader of this gang. And so Our Gang first aired as a silent short in the year 1922. And in that first feature, the cast of children were Ernie Morrison, which was Sunshine Sammy, Mary Kornman, aka Mary, Mickey Daniels, aka Mickey, Alan Hoskins, aka Farina, John Davis, aka Jack, Jackie Condon, aka Jackie or aka Jean, and Joe Cobb, aka Joe. Now, although this cast was a big deal because they were the very first cast that anybody laid eyes on, they were not the most important nor the most popular cast for the Our Gang series. Those titles belonged to the cast of Our Gang between 1936 and 1939. That's when the adorable faces of Spanky, Alfalfa, Darla, Buckwheat, and Porky graced everybody's screen. This cast right here were the absolute stars of Our Gang, aka Little Rascals. Americans looked forward to these children filling their theaters as well as their homes with laughter and joy week after week. And many of ours, yours and mine, many of our grandparents or maybe even parents in some of your cases, many of them grew up alongside these children. Many of them were the same ages as these children. So I'm pretty sure that they saw themselves in the children. But unfortunately, that's about where most of the similarities stop. Because while most of our grandparents and parents went on to live wonderful, fulfilling lives, many of the Our Gang characters had terrible lives, or they barely had lives at all because they passed away so early. In fact, so many of them passed away before their time that many people felt like the Our Gang cast was cursed. Let's go down the list of characters who passed away before they even made it to middle age. The first person on our list is Carl Dean Alfalfa Switzer. Now, Carl was born in 1927 and joined Our Gang cast in 1935. He was only 8 years old, but immediately he became immensely popular. Most people would agree that his character Alfalfa was the most famous little rascal outside of Buckwheat, and if the studio could have kept Carl young, 8 years old, for the rest of his life, baby, they would have loved it. But they could not. And by 1940, when Carl was 12 years old, he was aged out of the show. Now, immediately after he left Our Gang, Carl had several supporting roles and at least one starring role. But as his teen years transitioned into adult years, he had trouble transitioning from a child to teen to adult star. So by 1953, he was just about completely done with Hollywood. And so he ended up marrying a wealthy heiress that same year at the age of 26, and they had a son together. Carl could have lived in relative happiness with his wealthy behind wife, but allegedly he was a stone cold jerk, so their marriage did not work out. As a matter of fact, by 1957 they were divorced. Gossip claims that his Alfalfa character was truly him. He was very bossy, demanding, antsy, quick to anger. In fact, a lot of his cast members talked about how bossy and cocky he was, even when he became an adult. So since this was the way Carl was in real life, then things turned bad. First off, his slick behind mouth made him several enemies. Gossip claims that in 1958, he was at a bar in Studio City, California, and when he was getting in his car to leave, a bullet smashed through his windshield and hit him in his upper arm. Now, the gunman was never caught, but I'm sure if he wanted to come back and kill Carl Switzer, he could have with no problem. All he had to do was come right back to that same bar or any other bar around there, because that is where Carl spent most of his time. As a matter of fact, he was a heavy drinker by the late 1950s because he was disappointed with the choices he'd made in life. Since he'd made all of these horrible choices, most of the time he was very hard up for cash. And so he began doing a lot of odd jobs for money, and unfortunately one of these odd jobs led to his demise. The year was 1959, and Carl Switzer had a friend by the name of Moses Samuel Bud Stilts. And Bud Stilts was a man who was not really wealthy. I think he was more middle class, but he was definitely doing much better than Carl. And Bud Stilts ends up buying a dog. It is a Tring Walker Coonhound. And when he buys it, he starts talking to Carl, basically telling him, you know, man, I don't know nothing about this dog, but I love it. I really wish I could find somebody to train this dog. And Carl, who is always hard up for money, always looking for an opportunity, tells Bud, you know, hey man, I can train your dog. It's no problem. You pay me, I can get that coonhound trained. Well, you know them little Facebook memes that be like when you lie on your resume but still get the job? These memes right here. That must have been what Carl did. Because, child, why come Carl took that dog on the first day of training out to the woods, talking about some sit? Baby, the folks say the dog looked at Carl and barked and told him to shut up and took off running in the woods after a bear. Now, Carl could have went after the dog. Honey, Carl ain't went after nobody. In fact, what he did was go home. And when he finally got up enough nerve, he went over to his friend Bud's house and told him the dog went off running into the woods after a bear. Well, instead of Bud being understanding, he wanted to know why Carl had not run after his dog. He didn't care about a bear. And so he told Carl, either you go find my dog and bring my dog back to me, or you're going to pay me my dog's worth. And baby, you know Carl was stuck, because he had no idea where that dog was, and he also had no money at all to pay this man for the worth of that dog. And that dog in particular, if it was a prime breed, those can be upwards $800. Carl Switzer ain't had no money like that. So after a few days, Carl took out ads in the newspapers and the yellow pages, hung up ads around the town, and he basically said that there was a $50 reward for anybody who could find this dog. Well, 1 week passes, no answer. 2 weeks pass, no answer. But probably around the 3rd or 4th week, somebody did end up finding the dog. And Carl gave the person the $50 reward money. And then Carl took the coon dog back to Bud Stilts, and I'm guessing he was just happy everything had worked out and everything was over. Until it started to dawn on him, why did he have to pay $50 in reward money? Bud was the actual owner of the dog. He was the one that wanted the dog back. Shoot, Carl felt like, I didn't even like the stupid dog. Why did I have to pay the reward money? I don't have money like that. Bud is doing much better than me. He could have paid that dog on reward money. Basically, in Carl's mind, he starts to feel like somebody wronged him, totally dismissing the fact that he was the one that lost the dog in the first place. That's why he was the one paying the reward money. He's trapped in his pity party, woe is me. And he is drinking every day, and he's getting madder and madder. And soon he starts ranting to a friend by the name of Piot. And so Piot is agreeing, man, you sure is right. You shouldn't have to pay no money. That wasn't your doggone dog. If Bud wanted his own dog, he should have paid the reward money. Two drunk friends talking mess and hyping each other up. And then on January the 21st, 1959, they ended up going to Bud Stilts' house. They knock on the door, and when Bud Stilts opens the door, Carl and Piot barge into the house and pick up a glass clock off the table and bust Bud upside the head. Bud grabs his head and takes off running to the back room, and when he returns to the front, he has a .38 revolver. As soon as Carl sees it, he tries to grab the gun out of Bud's hands, and so they start fighting and wrestling. And while this is happening, Bud's 14-year-old stepson comes into the room. Right at that moment, the gun goes off, and a bullet grazes Bud's stepson's leg. When Carl sees this, it frightens him, and so he throws his hands up and he says, "Your stepson is shot. I'm sorry, Bud. I didn't mean for it to go this far. Me and Piot, we just gonna leave, okay? Come on, Piot, let's get out of here." While Carl and Piot are leaving out of the front door, Bud, who I guess is angry that these people tried to try him in his own house or something, picks up his revolver and shoots Carl in the groin. The bullet hits a massive artery, and Carl Switzer, aka Alfalfa, ends up dying right there on Bud's floor at the age of 31 years old. Next on the list is Scotty Beckett. Scotty was born in 1929, and he appeared on Our Gang between 1934 and 1935. Scotty was not a main character. In fact, he was a side character, and he was Spanky's best friend. However, although Scotty was not a huge standout star on the show Our Gang, he turned out to be one of the biggest celebrities out of all of the people who appeared on Little Rascals and Our Gang. By the late 1930s, early 1940s, Scotty Beckett was a certified child superstar. But sadly, he went the way of many child superstars, and he started behaving badly. And this led to him being arrested for the first time in 1948 on the suspicion of drunk driving. After this 1948 arrest, though, the studios still tried to give Scotty Beckett a chance. And in 1954, he was cast as Winky on Rocky John's Space Ranger. But Scotty was fired from the series faster than the blink of an eye because Scotty was arrested again on a concealed weapons charge. He also was arrested for passing bad check, and they also fired him because all of the other actors and actresses could not stand him because Scotty had a gambling problem. And okay, maybe that didn't concern them, but I'll tell you what sure enough did concern them. He would borrow money from them and go gamble that money away. And then when they asked for their money, he would cuss them out. So Scotty Beckett was really just in the fast lane going nowhere. He ended up getting married at least 3 times, and he had at least 1 child, but no matter what, he could never pull himself together. And in February of 1957, he was arrested once again, and this is because he was trying to cross the Mexico border with about 250 stimulants stimulant pill. And then in 1959, he was arrested again for possessing Benzendrine pill. 4 days later, the boy got high as heck and he almost killed himself when he crashed his car into a tree. He fractured his skull, he broke his hip, and that happened at the age of 29. Because his injuries were so severe, gossip claims that Scotty ended up having to use crutches or a wheelchair or both for the rest of his life. This made him depressed, and in 1962, when he was 32 years old, he tried to commit suicide by going on a heavy drinking binge. It did not work, but Scotty ended up slowly committing suicide anyway. Between 1962 and 1968, he did several drugs, drank several drinks, made several enemies, and I'm talking about enemies with big-time thugs and gangsters, stealing from them and things of that nature. And this led to him being shot at multiple times. And then on May 8th, 1968, he showed up at a Los Angeles nursing home. He had been beaten almost to death. When the doctor and the nurses tried to ask him what was wrong so they could inform the police, Scotty never did tell them. And then while he was still convalescing at the nursing home, he was found dead 2 days later on May 10th, 1968. Gossip claims a suicide note and a bottle of pills were found beside his bed, but none of the details have ever been released. As a matter of fact, they've never even gave a cause of death. They did an autopsy and still listed his cause of death as unknown. So all I know is that Scotty Beckett was 38 years old when he passed away. And next on the list is Bobby Hutchins, who was born on March 9th, 1925, and he joined our gang in 1927 as the character Weezer. And by all accounts, everybody thought that Bobby Hutchins, aka Weezer, was going to be one of the most successful Our Gang characters ever. When he first joined, he got hecka camera time, way more than some of the others, but he didn't get top billing because he was one of the younger ones. Well, allegedly, he was on his way to becoming top billed in 1932 because the older stars were starting to leave off. In fact, Jackie Cooper was one of these older stars that were starting to leave the show. So Bobby Hutchins, aka Weezer, once again was primed to take over the top spot. He was said to be the next gang leader. Well, again, that was said in 1932. Baby, by 1933, Weezer had not only left Our Gang, he was not in the acting business at all anymore. So what happened? Allegedly, his parents happened. Gossip claims that his parents were the earlier, worst version of Gary Coleman's parents on Different Strokes. Now, I told y'all in the Different Strokes video how Gary Coleman's parents were alleged to be. Bobby's parents were that and more. They would corner Bobby off so he couldn't talk to the rest of the cast. They had him on a strict diet, so not only could he not eat candy, he couldn't eat anything that the rest of the kids ate. They were constantly on set meddling with things, meddling with the producers or directors. If the directors told Bobby to stand here, his parents would come in and be like, I don't think that's good for him to stand there. Why can't he face the camera more? And then on top of that, they tried to constantly schedule meetings with top studio bosses to try to basically, I don't want to say whore their son out, because I guess that ain't the word, but maybe it is. You know what I'm saying? Just trying to put their son all out there. Let the producers and studio bosses know that anything that they wanted Bobby to do, he was willing to do. And I know that can go left real bad with the kind of history that Hollywood has, especially with child actors. I don't know if they were offering that kind of stuff up with their son, but gossip claims that they definitely kind of had it to where anything would be done for their son to be a star. They were absolutely a nuisance. Well, allegedly, everything went left because Bobby's father ended up arguing with one of the directors of the show. Something about Bobby should have had more lines. Well, not only did Bobby not get more lines, his behind got fired from the show. And child, the daddy was sitting up there looking real cheap. And allegedly, Bobby's parents got on Hollywood's nerves so bad that not only did the director make sure Bobby was fired from that show, they made sure that Bobby never worked in Hollywood again. And so when Bobby got the chance to finally break away from his parents, he did so immediately by joining the Air Force. But things got even worse for him there because Bobby was killed in a mid-air collision while he was trying to land a plane at the age of only 20 years old. Next up is Billy Laughlin. Billy was born in 1932 and joined our gang as Froggy between 1940 and 1944. He was a pretty popular character who stayed with our gang until the whole show was over, but it does seem like after our gang, he did not want to continue acting. He just wanted to live a normal life. But if there is an our gang curse, Billy Laughlin could not break away from it. He was only 16 when he was riding on a scooter with a friend when the friend made a U-turn in front of an oncoming truck. Poor Billy was rushed to the hospital, but he died soon after because of his severe injury. Next on the list is Donald Hain. Donald was born in 1919 and joined our gang as Dunny between 1930 and 1933. He enlisted in the Air Force in 1941 and died in action in 1943. Donald was only 23 years old. Next on the list is Clifton Young. Robert Howard Clifton Young was born in 1917 and he joined our gang under the name Bone Dust from the year 1925 to 1931. After his our gang tenure, Clifton was able to get more roles, but he was not able to parlay his career into an A-list actor status. And by 1950, it seemed that his movie roles were drying up. But who knows? It's very possible that he possibly could have made a comeback. But unfortunately, on September 10th, 1951, Clifton and his wife got into a huge argument, and instead of staying home to work things out, Clifton instead went to a hotel room that was rented by his male friend. Now maybe Clifton just wanted to blow off some steam. I don't know. What I do know is that after him and his friend finished talking, Clifton ended up lighting a cigarette and falling asleep and burning himself alive. He was only 34 years old. Next on our list is Norman Chaney. Norman Chaney was born on October the 18th, 1914, and from 1929 to 1931 he played the character of Chubby on our gang. By spring of 1931, which was the last year that he appeared on our gang, Norman was getting taller and chubbier, just way too big to continue to appear on the show. And so he was not offered another contract. And after this, he and his parents decided that he would not do acting anymore. He was said to have returned to Baltimore and to public schools where he absolutely excelled at his schoolwork. He had a very bright future, except he kept getting bigger and bigger. Gossip claims that he ate a regular diet, basically ate what everybody else ate, but he continued to gain weight. By 1935, when he was only 19 years old, he had topped out at 300 pounds, but he was still only 5'4" in height, and soon it was discovered that he had a glandular problem. And so he underwent treatment for his problem, and his weight dropped from 300 pounds to 140 pounds in a very short period of time. It caused major stress on his body. He ended up dying from myocarditis on May 29th, 1936 at the age of only 21 years old. Now, those are the list of people from our gang who died extra young. But there are still even more people who ended up dying before the age of 65. Billy Buckwheat Thomas died of a heart attack at the age of 49. Farina Allen Hoskins died of cancer at the age of 59. Mickey Daniels died from cirrhosis of the liver at age 55. Darla Hood had an appendectomy in 1980. Well, they found out that she'd contracted hepatitis C from a contaminated blood transfusion during the procedure. And during the procedure, she died suddenly of heart failure. And she was only 47 years old. Matthew Stymie Beard suffered a stroke and busted his head on some stairs in 1981, and he ended up dying at the age of 56. Kendall Frederick McComas, aka Breezy Brisbane, he committed suicide 2 weeks before he turned 65 because he was facing mandatory retirement from a job and he did not want to retire. Janet Burston died in her sleep. She was only 63. Jackie Condon died at 59 from colon cancer. And next, there is a bonus person on our list. This person didn't die an early tragic death. As a matter of fact, he just died in March of 2023. The reason he's a bonus on this list is because he is the most scandalous cast member of our gang. You guessed it, Robert Blake. It's just a scandalous thing, child. Allegedly, the man murdered his wife, honey. Child, the folks say in 1999, Robert Blake ended up meeting a young lady by the name of Bunny Lee Bakley. She was 42, he was 66. Bunny did did that sweet talk on him, told Robert that he was the best actor that she had ever seen, and ever since she was a little girl, she looked up to him and thought he was very handsome and very talented. And honey, Robert Blake fell all into that doggone trap. Within a few months, Bunny Lee Bakley was pregnant, and that's when the whole house of cards started tumbling down. Robert found out that Bunny Lee Bakley had been married 9 times already, found out that most of those men had been wealthy older men. She also had a history of dating wealthy older celebrities. But all that wasn't nothing. The Wu Chow moment came when Bunny informed Robert that she had been dating Marlon Brando's son, Christian Brando, the entire time that she had been dating Robert. And the baby that she was now pregnant with was possibly Christian Brando's child. Baby, Robert Blake was absolutely furious. He demanded that a DNA test be taken immediately after the child was born, and turns out the child was actually Robert Blake. Once it was found that the child was Robert Blake's, allegedly Bunny Lee Bakley became adamant that she and Robert needed to get married. She said that she wanted to give her child a 2-parent household where the parents were married. You know, she just wanted to make sure that her child grew up under the best circumstances. And so allegedly she pressured Robert Blake to marry her. And so Robert did marry her in the year 2000. Child, why come by 2001 that woman was dead? And folks say that on May 4th, 2001, Robert Blake took his wife Bunny Lee Bakley out to eat at an Italian restaurant in Studio City, California. After they were done, he walked her outside to the car that was parked on the side of the Italian restaurant and then told her he would be right back because he left his gun inside of the restaurant. Allegedly, the gun had fallen out of his pocket on the booth. Well, while Robert was gone back into the restaurant to retrieve his gun, somebody walked up on Bunny Lee Bakley and put a bullet in her head. Now, Robert said it wasn't him, honey, but you know, the police snatched him up real quick. In their mind, Robert had killed this lady, especially when they found out about the history of her cheating on him, lying to him, and allegedly pressuring him to marry her. And then he just so happens to walk away from the car and go inside of the restaurant, and somebody just comes and just shoots this lady in the head. Well, thinking and proving are 2 different things. And when Robert Blake ended up going to trial over this murder, he ended up being acquitted because they just could not prove that he was the one that pulled the trigger. And there was also some talk during the trial saying that he got his bodyguard to do the deed, but they also couldn't prove that. So yeah, Robert Blake might have gotten acquitted, but still, who would ever have imagined that this cute little face from our gang would grow up to stand trial for a murder? Baby, just say it with me. The scandal, child. The scandal. And this is the end of this old Hollywood scandal. If you guys like the video, go ahead and like the video. If you guys are new here, go ahead and subscribe. If you guys have been sitting on the bench, and some of y'all have, don't be sitting up there lying, yes you have, been sitting up here for about a year just sitting on the bench, go ahead and click subscribe. I love you guys so much. I have another video that is already in the works, and I will see you guys soon. Bye.